So today I'm going to be talking to you all about the advancements in male birth control over time. So part one, we will be talking about the advancements and what male birth control actually is. So male birth control is a method of contraceptive, which is a method or device serving to prevent pregnancy that solely involves the male physiology. There are three common methods that we see, that are actually produced at the moment. The first is condoms, which I have a picture of right there. They have a 98% success rate in the United States. And then vasectomy, which is oftentimes irreversible, is a medical procedure that some men get whenever they have no other option. Right down here is a picture of a vasectomy completed, and then this is with the vas efferents still intact and not completed. So next is coitus interruptus, which is the pull-out method. And then one other thing I wanted to know before we get into what male birth control is and the studies and stuff is women are often at risk. So whether it's from religious reasons or medical reasons such as blood clotting, jaundice, high blood pressure, or any type of uterine, ovarian cancer, they cannot take birth control. So this is why we are in such need of male birth control. So according to the Male Contraceptive Initiative, 17 million men are looking for a new form of contraception to fit their lifestyle. 89% of men report that it's important for the method to be reversible, which, as I talked about earlier, vasectomy, which is one of the most common methods at the moment, is not reversible all the time. And then over 80% of men feel sole or shared responsibility for pregnancy prevention. So this means that there is a major need for a new form of male birth control, and that is why we will be getting into the studies next. So the studies conducted. I'm going to start with the earlier studies, the ones that took place in the 1950s, and then I'm going to move on to the ones that took place in the 2000s at the beginning of the modern feminist movement. So the earlier studies. Gregory Pincus, who is the co-inventor of the female pill, took the same approach, same exact hormonal approach with progestogen in 1957 on men, and it failed miserably. And the most extreme side effects, however, were only acne and depression, which female birth control has a very long list, actually, of side effects. So I kind of just found that funny that they stopped the trial after two very small side effects such as those. Then Gospel, which was promoted and designed by Elsie Marcutino, who is a famed sex and fertility doctor in Brazil, was tested at the Federal University of Bahia, and they did not talk about it much more besides the fact that they ended up not testing it on the men at the campus because the women there were upset and were completely against it because the men there were their boyfriends and they didn't want them possibly losing fertility for life. So in 1972, 8,806 men in China participated in the trial as well, and it's actually the largest scale clinical trial done with male birth control to this day. And the daily doses reduced the rate of sperm production enough to where it was acceptable to the researchers. However, the side effects that occurred in 66 men were not. They had low potassium blood levels, and some men never regained full sperm counts after getting off of the drug. So after that, the researchers decided to test Gospel on rats, and they found that Gospel damaged the lines of the epididymis lining, and that was the reason why the men were not gaining sperm counts back afterwards. So another funny one is poorer countries in the 1970s actually found really great use for Gospel. It helped them with food production, so they decided Gospel could be found in cotton extract. It was like a hormone somehow found in cotton extract. It didn't really explain more about that, but they started feeding cotton extract to their bulls, and it caused the bulls to have a lot more sex than usual, but they thought they would be producing more calves in the future, but in the whole entire time they had no sperm levels at all. So it really reduced the amount of sperm, but they never ended up getting anybody pregnant, the cows pregnant. So then down here is just a picture of hormonal contraceptives that females use on a daily basis. There's a bunch of different colored packs. That's just the different types of hormones that are included in them. So this is at the beginning of the new modern idea of male contraceptives. And it's study number 1, which happened in 2003 to 2004. And it was done by Edinburgh University scientists, and they boasted that it was a 100% success rate in 30 men. They tested a progestogen pill and testosterone implant, both of which were produced by the Dutch company Organon. So Organon actually began to have interest in it a few years later, and they decided to team up with a German company named Schering and have a clinical trial with 297 men, 52 of which were given placebos, which is a psychological drug to calm the mind during clinical trials like this. And all of the men used other forms of contraceptives, which is like the condoms like we talked about earlier, and monitored their sperm count on a daily basis. So the side effects were actually a cause for concern. They were, once again, like common ones that we see every day with a lot of drugs: acne, weight gain, mood swings, lower sex drive, depression, and then the most extreme one was one attempted suicide in the non-placebo group. And after the trial, 9/10 of the men's sperm fell below the million mark, and they all recovered normal fertility after about 4 weeks. So after the trial ended, there was a company, or not after the trial ended, there was a company buyout by Bayer, which is another pharmaceutical company, and they decided to stop the trial immediately. They just weren't interested in male contraceptives at the time, but they have regained interest in the past few years with it on the brink of reality now. So now we're going to talk about the science behind hormonal male contraceptives. I feel like it's sometimes confusing for people to understand why you're giving a male a female hormone that's naturally produced in a female's body. So progestogen is used in female pills, and it can stop the male brain from producing a luteinizing, I can't say that word, hormone that stimulates the production of testosterone in sperm. So basically it shuts down the sperm production in the testes, and it also, the testes which produce testosterone, is also shut down. So that's why there's a testosterone injection or implant, whichever they choose with the trial, given with progestogen. And the testosterone implant or injection just prevents like unwanted side effects such as weakened muscles and sex drive. So down here is just a figure of testosterone, its chemical compound, and then this is the hormone progestogen. So study number 2, which happened in 2012, is the WHO-Conrad trial, and they used 200 couples in the trial. And it actually ended up stopping early and failing miserably, and they did not really elaborate as to why it stopped early. All they said was that it was not scientific obstacles, it was really just the amount of money that they were given to do the research and how it was not extensive enough for them to continue. So the next study, which happened in 2016, is a phase 2 clinical trial that was done on 320 male participants. 20 of the men ended up dropping out early due to mood swings, acne, and injection site pain. So injection site pain can happen from any type of shot. Like we feel it when we go and get like the tetanus shot, or when, I don't even know how often you get that, but you get it. So we feel that, and this was just basically because they were getting an injection every single day in similar spots in their body. So those were considered extreme side effects to a lot of researchers, which I also found funny, being that we literally encounter that on a daily basis with so many different drugs, especially female birth control. So it was an injection of progesterone and testosterone, which is the first time we will see this throughout the studies. Like normally they would give an implant of progesterone and an injection of testosterone, but this time they decided to do an injection of both, which ended up working out well for the rest of the men. However, an independent safety review board decided that after one man committed suicide and a few others never regained full sperm function, they concluded that the risks outweighed the benefits and decided to stop the trial. Afterwards, however, 75% said they would take it again after the trial ended. So study number 4, which happened in 2018, just last year, was introduced at the Population Control Conference in Chicago on March 18, 2018. And it was a prototype pill known as DMAU, which is a compound that's called dimethylmethyldrolone undecanoate. And it reduced the hormone levels, preventing testosterone. So this one, they didn't use like a testosterone injection. They just used this drug that prevented testosterone from growing to levels where the sperm would regain function. So there were 83 patients in it, and they had absolutely no side effects that were extreme to the point where they would have to stop the trial. There was actually no further testing with this pill at this point. However, Monica Laranda, who is a reproductive endocrinologist at the Children's Hospital of Chicago, claim that scientists have been working on male contraceptive for decades and that DMAU shows great promise. So this is really great to know that we could be seeing male contraceptive pills in the future, in the next few years. So now we're going to watch a video on DMAU and its side effects, or not side effects, like what it's made up of. Oh, no. Wait, what am I doing, Mondo? Oh, here. Okay. Is it good like
Hit
that?
escape.
Okay.
Now hit present.
So as you can see, the researchers are still claiming that it's like a very strong advancement in male contraceptives. So we could be seeing more of this within the next few years. Okay, so the next one, which started in 2018, but is still continued into 2019, it's actually my personal favorite. The National Institutes of Health is producing this trial. It's a male contraceptive gel known as NEST or NEST, and the NES, which is nesterone, is a progestin compound of progesterone acetate, and the T stands for testosterone, which we talked about earlier. And it would be applied on the back and shoulders and absorbed through the skin to prevent or to lower sperm counts. So there will be 420 couples in the trial. The men will use the gel for 4 to 12 weeks to see if any undesirable side effects occur. And then after the successful 12 weeks, they will move on to 16 weeks. And then if that's successful at that point, they will move on to an efficacy phase that lasts for 52 weeks, so a whole year. And it will evaluate pregnancy prevention. So the men nor their partners will be on any other form of birth control besides the gel. So after a successful 52 weeks, there will be a 24-week monitoring period, and that will just be to make sure that the male sperm counts rise up to desirable levels and that there are no problems afterwards with fertility. So there's going to be 2 sites for the trial, the UCLA Medical Center and the University of Washington, Seattle. So I just wanted to talk about the advancements more in depth. One of the articles really emphasized that the earlier studies involved the same hormonal approach, which we saw in the 1957 study and the 1972 study, where they just used progestogen and not the testosterone. And they added testosterone in the early 2000s to counter what progestogen was doing to the testes. So the scientific advancements over time have encouraged more innovative methods as well. Like I said, with the gel, I personally think that's the most innovative form I've seen, like as far as male contraceptives go. Like I never would have thought you could put something on your skin and it would make sperm levels lower. So, and then the injection form, which is really not new, but it is compared to the pill form that they created in the 1950s. And then the implant and injection, that's just a way of combining 2 different methods, and the implant wasn't even seen until 2005 in female birth control. So now that they're using it in males, we possibly could be seeing it in the near future. There's also a large gap between the early studies and the modern day studies. There was about 30 years from 1972 to 2003, and a lot of researchers and scientists believe that this was because of a push for equal views. So we see the modern day feminist movement, like I talked about on the first slide, coming in like the 2000s, early 2000s, and feminism is believing in equal rights for all. So they believe that since that started, that's why there was such a big push for male contraceptive to begin research again. So the scientific differences. So to start off, female birth control and the pill, IUD, injection, sterilization, and implant form stop the actual release of the egg from the vagina. So during intercourse, there will, oftentimes there is no possibility whatsoever of the female getting pregnant, except for in the pill form. There's sometimes, depending on the pill, a slight chance. The male hormonal birth control that we saw in the trials earlier only reduces the sperm count, so any amount of sperm can possibly get a female pregnant. And that is a big issue they are seeing at the moment, is that they cannot completely reduce the sperm count, so it's not as effective as female birth control. And like I said, it just does not prevent the transfer of sperm during intercourse like female birth control does with the egg. So why this is, there's one egg versus millions of sperm. So if you put that into perspective, it's completely understandable why it's taking researchers so long to come to a conclusion with a new form of male contraceptive. So part 2, the history of birth control. When motherhood becomes the fruit of a deep yearning, not the result of ignorance or accident, its children will become the foundation of a new race. This was said by Margaret Sanger, who is the founder of Planned Parenthood and was a women's rights activist in the early 1900s. So now we're going to watch a video on birth control of the past by time.
For as long as men and women have been having children, they've been trying to figure out how not to. Artifacts dating back to ancient times have shown that contraceptives have been used for thousands of years. Unsurprisingly, not every method was all that effective. In ancient China, concubines would drink a cocktail of lead and mercury. Unfortunately, the side effects included sterility, brain damage, kidney failure, and death.
Shocking.
Ancient Egyptian women would mix honey, sodium carbonate, and crocodile dung into a thick paste they would insert into themselves before having sex. In Greece, in the year 200, a gynecologist named Cyrannus advised women to hold their breath during intercourse and sneeze afterward. And in the Middle Ages in Europe, women believed tying weasel testicles to their thighs or around their necks during sex would prevent pregnancy. But it wasn't all a shot in the dark. Many modern forms of contraception have roots in the ancient past. For example, ancient cave drawings found in France appear to show an early version of a condom, and a prototype of the cervical cap has been used since Casanova's days. In his memoirs, written in the 18th century, he describes using partially squeezed lemon halves to do the trick. The modern history of not having babies begins in the mid-1800s, when vulcanized rubber was patented and condoms could be mass-produced. Yet for much of the 19th and early 20th centuries, women had a hard time getting their hands on effective contraception. Anti-obscenity laws in the U.S. restricted anyone, including doctors, from spreading information about it. But that didn't stop women from trying to prevent pregnancy. Many women would use household products such as Lysol or Coca-Cola, which they believed would kill sperm. Advertisements for Lysol even endorsed the product as a way for women to protect their married happiness. All of that changed in 1960, when the FDA approved an oral contraceptive pill, thanks to the tireless efforts of activist Margaret Sanger and a team of doctors. Within 5 years, millions of American women had prescriptions for the pill. In the following decades, other forms of reliable contraception appeared, including IUDs. Safe and effective birth control still isn't a universal privilege. A 2013 report found that 222 million women from developing countries around the world said they wanted to use birth control but didn't have access to it. But in the US, a whopping 99% of women of childbearing age say that they've used some form of contraception. No crocodile dung required.
Okay, so as you can see from the video, video, we've been trying for thousands of years to come up with an effective form of hormonal contraceptive, and they finally reached that goal in the mid-1900s for women, and a lot of it was focused on women preventing pregnancy. It was never really focused on men like coming up with a method as well. So since the success did not happen until the mid-1900s, it took them a very long time to come up with that. So I feel like hypothetically it could take men much longer to finally reach a completely, I can't think of what I'm trying to say. Just no sperm count whatsoever. Okay, so, and then male birth control is basically just a continuation of the female birth control advancement. So now that we're seeing it more often, it could be realistic in the next few years for us to see it on the shelves. So Planned Parenthood. I wanted to include this because of the activist Margaret Sanger, like I talked about earlier. So in 1916, she founded Planned Parenthood, and as many of you may know from history classes, Margaret Sanger, her mom had 11 kids and 7 miscarriages, and ended up dying young from tuberculosis, which was an illness that was brought on by her how many pregnancies she had. She did not want this to happen to anybody else. Her father thought of her mom's body more as an object, and that's why her mother had so many kids without a choice, and she wanted to make sure that women knew they had control of their own bodies. So she was a trailblazer for feminism and birth control methods for all, including men. She actually emphasized in a few different cases that she did want one day for there to be a birth control method for men as well. Planned Parenthood is a nonprofit research organization known for contraceptive methods, and a lot of people know about it because of abortion, which is actually not like what they focus on a lot. Some people also consider abortion a form of contraceptive. It just really depends on who you are and your beliefs, but Planned Parenthood also participates in a lot of other great things like family planning and reproductive problems resources. So Planned Parenthood has also in the past few years encouraged and supported the study of male birth control methods. So the female methods. There are currently 12 female methods that we see in the United States. A few of them involve the male as well, but the first is a condom, which we talked about earlier. There's now also a female condom being produced, and the pill, which has been in circulation since the mid-1900s. And then the hormonal ring, IUD, injection, surgical sterilization, implant, which we started seeing in the mid-2000s, coitus interruptus, which we talked about earlier, is the pull-out method, calendar rhythm method, which is tracking when you're ovulating, and the patch and diaphragm. So, as you can see, it takes a lot of time to produce this many methods, and it took about 70 years for them to produce all of these. But the main focus has been on females for decades. So now that we're focusing on males, we could be seeing it within the next few years, hopefully. And most of the methods are extremely successful. However, the calendar method, which I said earlier is tracking when you're ovulating, it's not always reliable because you cannot always control what your body does on a monthly basis, especially in the teenage years. And then the pull-out method, which is just a very unreliable method. I personally don't even think it should be considered a form of birth control. So part 3, the effects, reasoning, controversy, opinions, and benefits. So the future effects. I foresee a reduced pregnancy rate with male birth control. As I said earlier, a lot of women cannot take birth control, whether it's for religious or medical reasons. So if their partners were able to take it, and not just in the condom form or having a vasectomy, it could be very beneficial for reducing the unexpected pregnancy rate in America. It would also normalize male responsibility. It's very typical for a man to not take responsibility for a lot of things, let alone pregnancies. So I believe that this could really help out in that area. It also could possibly have health benefits similar to females. So a lot of female birth control helps with other things such as reducing acne. It can help you with weight loss. It also has some bad side effects such as weight gain and heavier periods depending on what kind of hormones in your birth control. And then down here is just a graph I wanted to show you. According to men, they believe that 20.6% of women should be according to men, 20.6% of them believe that women should be completely responsible for contraceptives in the relationship. And then according to women, it's 17.6%, which it only dropped about 3%, and I just was kind of shocked about that. It also said that for men, 71.9% of them believe that it should be a shared responsibility, and according to women, 74.2% believe it should be a shared responsibility. So why this topic? I enjoy the science behind female and male birth control alike. I agree that we need it within the next few years. I think it's a long time coming. I think we should have had it a while ago, honestly, but since there was a lack in research over time, the science is just catching up now. I also enjoy the political and medical controversy. Anything political really gets me into a topic, and this one has a lot of it behind it, as we'll talk about in a few minutes. And I've always been interested in Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood. Just hearing it through the news and in history classes, it's just always been a big interest of mine. Feminism. I think feminism, it revolves around equal rights for all, and if a woman can take female birth control, well, just birth control in general, a man can do it too. And free birth control for all. I think it's a right for everybody in the United States to have birth control. It's something that could do well for our country and for ourselves, so that was another reason I got into this topic. So the controversy, medical versus societal. So the medical controversy. The first one is extreme side effects could outweigh the benefits. So a lot of people are saying, is it really worth it for a man to have to go through the clinical trials and testing with birth control that we are not really guaranteeing anything out of yet if there's already a female contraceptive successful. Others say that it's worth it in the long run, that we could possibly have a male contraceptive that's effective and in the pill, injection, gel form that all men could take in the United States if necessary. Are all men willing to possibly give up fertility for life in the event of a bad side effect? Like I said earlier, this is fairly new. It's like the new era of male contraceptive, and if something were to go wrong, like an unforeseen side effect, and that would be losing fertility for life, how many men would actually want that and would be willing to take the pill and have that risk? So just like with any other clinical trial and scientific trial, is the unknown. There are a lot of unknowns with male birth control, especially due to the fact that we cannot completely reduce the amount of sperm to 0 at the moment. Like I said, with the fertility, as well as other side effects that could be more extreme. Will Planned Parenthood take on male patients as well? So Planned Parenthood, one of their main values is like helping all with bodily rights. So since men would have the ability to take a new form of contraceptive, would they take on male patients as well and provide them with resources to receive this contraceptive? And once again, one egg versus millions of sperm. The money that goes into researching this is quite extensive, and if they cannot afford to get it to happen within the next 10 years, will it actually be worth it to spend all of that money on it? So the societal and political. So traditional views. A lot of times the male role in society is considered dominant, and it has been for thousands of years. It's finally starting to become more equal in our society, but a lot of people believe that men should not be responsible and that females should be responsible for birth control in the first place. Females have always been responsible for the contraception due to early accomplishments. So for about 70 years now, they've been responsible for contraception. Not solely responsible, because we do have methods such as condoms and vasectomies and the pull-out method, but they've been solely responsible as far as receiving and paying for and getting that type of birth control whenever they're in the case of a man not being able to buy the other kinds. So it's not considered male behavior to take responsibility for pregnancy. Like as we watched in the video, in a lot of cases, the men did not help out with the children after pregnancy, and a lot of times we see single mothers in America. There are actually 9,040,000 single mothers in America at the moment, and I thought this statistic was pretty crazy. I think it really shows why we have a need for birth control in the male form as well. And I'm not saying that this could lower this number, and it's not always a bad thing to be a single mother. It's just the responsibility of a man really does play a role in it. Will male contraception be covered by healthcare providers? So the Affordable Care Act, which was a big thing during the Obama White House, said that most insurance plans could cover completely or partially cover birth control. And we still see today a lot of them are fully covered. I know a lot of people I know, as well as myself, still have to pay for birth control. And even though they're lower amounts, it's still not down to the level that a lot of people believe it should be. So will male contraception be covered as well under the Affordable Care Act? So if that were the case, or a lot of people believe that since it took females so many years to get contraceptive coverage, that if men got it right off the bat, it would be somewhat unfair. So if it's not covered, will men be willing to pay for this over a cheap, nearly as effective condom? This was one that I found very interesting. I don't think there's really a big difference in having one that's like 100% effective compared to one that's like 98, 99% effective most of the time. And I do really believe that most men would opt in to the condom method just because it's more accessible and would take less of a toll on their body possibly. So before, I thought it was a great idea, and I believed it could benefit men and women alike. I don't think it just had to be something that could benefit men. I think it could also help a lot of women as far as their contraceptive duties. And it could reduce unwanted pregnancy rates and teen pregnancy. If, like I said earlier, if women cannot take contraceptives due to medical or religious reasons, this could be a great resource for their partners. It gives women with no contraceptive choice the ability to enjoy intercourse without worry. Like I also just said, medical and religious reasons could really prevent a woman from enjoying intercourse, which is initially the reason for intercourse. So I believe that it could just be beneficial for a lot of women as well. After, I thought it was an amazing advancement, and I think the future benefits seem likely and soon. But I do believe, however, that we need to work out some of the side effects. I don't think we should just say it's okay, like push those side effects on men as well. If we can work them out, I don't want to wish it on anybody else. So, and it could finally even the contraception responsibility between men and women. As I talked about earlier again, we see a lot of like back and forth with that, and I think if we could finally give men an option to where they could be even more responsible, it would be great for our society. So the benefits and possible consequences. Some of the benefits, I believe that it makes men more responsible for their own wants and needs, and it could also reduce unexpected pregnancy rates. And then some of the consequences. So on a daily basis in the United States, 123 men take their lives. And that's a really big issue we've seen in a lot of our classes. It's on the news all the time. And so with the side effect of depression, could this number increase? And it could be very costly initially. We talked about the Affordable Care Act and healthcare, and would it be able to come into play as soon as male birth control is on the shelves? Here are my references. Thank you.